All right, everybody, welcome to night 4, the final night of our first chapter of this series. Don't know how long the series will go on, but at least we have our first chapter in the books. So if you haven't already, you definitely want to check out the first 3 videos. The stuff we're going to be talking about tonight is a little bit more advanced than some of the stuff we've done before. So if you're coming into this fresh, please go check out those other videos before you dive right in. For those of you watching on YouTube, feel free to throw questions in the chat. Keep in mind there's a delay. And I've also got some people with me here on Zoom live. If in future sessions you would like to be a part of that live conversation, you can find the registration form for those on my website. So great, let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing, if you haven't already, I tried to make sure everybody knew this, but if you haven't already, you're going to want to go on the App Store, either on your iPhone or your iPad, and download the FileMaker Go app. Now, you might find a couple of different versions of that app. I'm going to be using FileMaker Go 19 because I'm using FileMaker 19. For the most part, any of the newer versions of the app should be able to open any of the previous versions of your file. So download 19 even if you're using an older one. Great, let's jump right in. So stand by while I share. Oh, before I share my screen, I need to set up FileMaker or set up the database. Okay, waiting for this to switch over. Great. So here's the finished file from last night. This is kind of a culmination of our 3 days of work. The first thing I want to do before I try to connect any kind of other computer or any kind of mobile device to my file is to turn on local file sharing. So to do that, I'm going to go in FileMaker to File, Sharing, Share with FileMaker Clients. Now, you'll notice I have 2 files open here just because on my other screen, I've got the finished version of this so I can reference it. But you want to make sure that whatever your file name is what you have selected here. And then you're going to turn on network sharing. It's a chance that it might already be on. But if not, you make sure you want to turn it on. And then for now, we're just going to say all users can access this open file. So turning sharing on, choosing the current session or the current file we're working in, and then all users. Now, one thing I did notice in my testing today that I've never noticed before, if you have a dot in your file name, it will have there's a bug will not allow you to open it on mobile. So you see I changed mine to an underscore. So just keep that in mind in case you get an error or something like that. You can't use a dot in the file name. I'm sure there's other things you can't use too, but that was new for me today. Okay, so I'm going to click OK, and it looks like nothing has happened. But what I've done in the background is I've told FileMaker to go ahead and make that file open on my local network. So now if we switch over to the phone, here we go. Here's my phone. There's my cats. You'll open the FileMaker Go app. And again, you want to make sure that you are on the exact same network as your hosted file. So if you don't have Wi-Fi on, or if you have multiple Wi-Fi networks or multiple VLANs, you might have some issues there. And right away on the host screen, on the host tab down here on the bottom right, you'll see localhost show up. There's my iMac right there. There's my computer. So when I tap on that, it's going to give me a list of the files that my computer is currently sharing. And I want the session 1.4. So I'm going to tap on that. And look, right away, this looks very familiar to us, right? This is the layout that we made yesterday, that printing worknotes layout that we made last night. So if I click on the down arrow here, I can choose a different layout. So it's the top left corner. I can click layout, and then just like within my FileMaker structure on the computer, I can choose any of these layouts that I've made. But right away, you're probably noticing that these layouts we've made are not very mobile friendly. They're not really super useful. I mean, if I had to in a pinch, I could add some data in here, but it would be pretty hard to work with this, especially my worknotes one. It'd be pretty hard to work with this in everyday life. So what I'm going to do, let me switch back over to my computer here. I am going to instead create a specialized layout that exists just for this mobile device. So in my case, I'm using the iPhone. If you're using an iPad, the steps are exactly the same. You just need to kind of scale accordingly. So first thing I'm going to do is open up my layout manager. So we looked at this for the first time last night. File, manage layouts, or Command Shift L. And I'm going to move this away so we can see it all. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close some of these folders, and I'm going to make, you guessed it, a new folder called mobile layouts. And I'm going to go even a little bit more detailed than that. I'm going to put a subfolder in there for work notes, because one day I might choose that I want to add some mobile layouts for my instruments or mobile layouts for other things. Great. So now I've got the folder structure set up, and I'm going to click on the new layout button. Now, when I do that, you'll notice we have a couple of different options that pop up. Yesterday, we used the printer layout. We've used the computer layout before, but today we're going to be using the touch device layout option. I'm going to choose, in my case, again, iPhone. And I'm going to name this iPhone worknotes, making sure that it's showing me records from the database, or from the table that I want. So I'm choosing showing records from worknotes. And I want this, let's start off with just a form view. So just a single record view. Got those things set up, and I click finish. And now just like that, if I look over here in my layout editor, I have the start of a mobile layout. One quick thing you can turn on, if you look here next to your exit layout button, there is a little option with a drop down here, and this is called, I believe, screen margins, I want to say. But either way, it gives you a little highlight as to where, as you turn it on, it gives you a highlight, a little yellow highlight around your window that shows you the default size for that particular layout that you're working in. Now, I will say, I think that some of this is a little finicky when it comes to laying out some of your mobile layouts. So there is a little bit of trial and error involved with that, and kind of getting it, learning how the finicky parts of the software work to get it looking exactly the way you want it to look. Okay, so right away we notice we've got a header here, we've got a body, but we're missing a footer. So I'm going to go in and add that footer. And remember, to do that, I'm right-clicking down here in this empty space, going to Part Setup, creating a footer. Just like that. Make that footer a little bit bigger. And now I want to go ahead and start adding some data to this layout. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I don't want to start from scratch. So the most obvious thing to do is going to be to go back to one of my other layouts that I made, my worknotes layout, and start copy pasting things into this one. So to do that, I'm going to move this one over to the side. I'm going to go to Window, New Window, and you'll notice it opened up the exact same layout again. I'm just going to put it next to it, and I'm going to switch this over to worknotes. Now you notice I'm in the layout editor in both of these windows at once. So I can come in here and I can start copy pasting some of my buttons over into this one. And right away I notice, okay, well, this is taking up a whole lot of space. I probably don't want this size of buttons. And that's one of the things you got to kind of plan this out a little bit and keep in mind that what you can click on a screen is not the same as what you can touch with your finger. So you might want to make some buttons a little bit bigger, maybe change some of the details. In my particular case, I'm going to go in and change these to be just icons. And I'm going to make them all a little bit, oops, make them all just a little bit smaller, something like that. And I think that, do I have pad? Yep, I've got some extra padding in there that I don't need. So I'm going to get rid of that padding, which will allow me to make these just that fraction of a bit smaller and useful, like that. Okay, so I've got those. Now let's say I probably want my next and previous and next buttons. And again, because these buttons already have those script steps attached to them, I don't have to go back in and do all that work that I've done these last few days. I don't have to go in and specify what these all do. They automatically do that. And because we made them in such a way that was kind of agnostic to the table we were working in, I don't have to worry about it ever like creating the wrong thing or anything like that. Great. Back into layout mode. Now, the cool thing you can do with this, and I wish I could show you both of these things at the same time, but I'm going to have to switch back and forth, is on your iPhone, you can switch yourself over to that layout you just created. So if I go to mobile layouts, worknotes, iPhone worknotes, and you can leave that open on your screen. And as you work in the layout editor, for example, you can't see this right now, but I'm going to move some buttons in the layout editor. As soon as I commit those changes, watch what happens on my phone screen. those buttons jump right over to that position. So it's kind of like a little testing ground where you can have the phone or the iPad open and watch what's happening in real time as you commit those changes. So it's you have to go back into browse mode to do it, but it's a pretty cool feature. Switch back over. Great. Move these guys back to where they were. Okay, so now I'm ready to start pulling in some of the actual information about my notes. So probably I know I'm going to want contents in there. Again, I'm going to have to resize a lot of this to fit. For now, I'm just going to do that. We're going to want all of these friends. Copy that, paste those. And let's say probably want type on top. And we'll say status assigned to and note from. Show you another little trick here. See how we got some weird spacing here? I can click and drag those things. But if I make each one of these things a little group like this, I'm just clicking and doing Command G to group them. Why didn't that work? Oh, because it's Command R, sorry. To make a group, it's Command R. I can group each one of these little horizontal lines. And then if I select them all, under my arrangements tab here, my ruler little tab here, position, excuse me, I can now space those things. I can align them first of all. I probably don't want to do that, align them this way. I can resize them. I can also then space them evenly, distribute the space evenly between them. So kind of a nice little thing. And then I could always come back in and ungroup them by doing Command Shift R. Just a little trick. Okay, so I have those. I know I'm going to want the note ID, obviously. Probably the most important thing. We'll put the priority on there. And let's do the target ID as well. Great. And again, because these records are related to the instruments that they are connected to or that they're related to, I could come in here and I could drop other fields in. I could take my position field, for example. I'm just going to do 1, and I can drop that in here. Even though it's on that other table, they're related, so it'll know to show me that position. Okay. So now I've got the note contents, make that kind of big, and then finally our photo. Something like that. Good. And I'm going to give that just a background fill color. Good. So now when I go back into browse mode, you see here on the computer, it looks fine. And then if I switch it over to my phone here, you'll see the exact same layout eventually. There it comes. But you notice one thing right away, it's not exactly the size that we want it to be. So there's a couple of ways we can work with this. And this is where, when I say FileMaker can be a little bit finicky, this is where it comes into play. And that's just dealing with how things get laid out and become responsive if you're used to web design and web development at all. So I'm going to show you one way to do that today. You can get creative with zooming and stuff like that. But if you're doing it really quick, this is the way that I think works a little bit better. So I'm going to come back into my layout editor on the computer, and I'm going to go back over to my ruler or my position tab, and I'm going to look at this little box right here that says auto sizing. So what auto sizing allows me to do is to resize fields and objects based on the canvas that they're put on, or based on the screen resolution that they're put on. So for example, I could take contents. Right now, it is locked size-wise with a relationship from the top and the sides with these two little locks here. If I give it this other side, watch what then happens. Now, it's going to be responsive, and as I drag and make this layout bigger or smaller, it's going to keep that same proportion that I had set up before as far as relationships to the edge, but it's going to get bigger. So again, to make that make a little more sense, when right now I've got it locked to the top, left, and right. So as I move this, you notice that the space between, like the margin between the edge of this box and my side here stays the same, but the box itself gets bigger. So I'm going to do that with all of these little horizontal lines. I'm just going to lock them left, right. And then for my buttons, I'm going to lock these, instead of top left, I'm going to lock these bottom left. So now what's going to happen when I go back into this view, my layout is going to be, those buttons at the bottom are always going to stay locked to the bottom of this layout, no matter what. Now, obviously, if you get it really small, then it's going to get confused, but you get the idea. And let's say I wanted to make sure that these two here stay locked to the right side. I can change this from a left lock over to a right lock. And now they're going to maintain their position and their size based on that information. So pretty cool stuff. I'm also going to do the same thing with the photo field here. Now there's some other options here as far as removing things if certain fields are empty and stuff like that. Not going to get into that today. There will be a future lesson on that, because again, that gets a little bit more complex. But let's see, what else do we need? Well, we need a title at the top, don't we? I'm going to copy this in. Where did it go? Oh, down there. I accidentally made that way too big. Great. So now when I go back into browse mode, notice that the worknotes thing kind of went off to the side here. So I'm going to do that same anchoring left and right again. Cool. Now it's starting to look like a pretty nice little thing. I've got a pretty responsive layout here that's going to work on a phone. It's going to work on an iPad. It's going to work on different screen sizes or different window sizes on the computer too. And let's look at that over on the phone for a second. Great. Looks pretty good. And now if you notice, I can go, oh, I can't click on the screen. I gotta use my hand. That's right. I can go record by using those buttons. And if you notice at the bottom of the FileMaker Go window, there's also some buttons to do that this way. Get the idea there. Now, there are ways we can script this so that it hides those default FileMaker buttons if you wanted to. So it's kind of like a full screen thing, and it looks like you're kind of your own standalone app. But we're not going to worry about that today. So first thing we want to look at right away here is, this is really cool. I can go record by record, but what if I want to see them all in a list like I did before? Well, I can click on the down arrow at the top right. And if I notice right away, there's no option for that. If I go to layout, there's some options. I can go form list table, but as I start to click on those things, I can't. All that's selected is form. And that has to do with how we set things up in the very beginning when we first made this layout. Remember when we chose a default view for it? We chose that default view to be form only. So what we want to do is we want to go back into our layout editor, and we want to enable list view for that particular layout. So back here in our layout editor, I'm going to do Command L, and I'm going to right click anywhere out here in this space, and I'm going to choose Layout Setup. Once I've chosen Layout Setup, I can go to my Views tab, and you notice right here, only Form View is currently available. So great, I'm going to enable List View as well. I'm not going to enable Table View because there's no reason. You can also choose a default. Wonderful. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to commit those changes. And now when I go back over to my phone, if I go to that same layout option again, you see now I can choose list. And it's going to ask me, do I want to save that change with the layout? That basically means, do I want to enter that view the next time I open that layout? So I'm going to say no for now. And right there, I've got a scrollable list that I can scroll with my finger and see all of those individual records. Now, you might have two separate layouts for that. You might have one that's going to be record only view. You might have one that is list only view. Totally up to you, totally how you want to work and what you think the most useful solution is. And of course, all my buttons still work. I can jump from record to record by using those buttons that I created before. And if I want to switch back over to a single view, I can do that by going like that. Now, you might be saying, that's a whole lot of clicks. Can't I just put that on a button? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is a whole lot of clicks to have to go through all of that in the FileMaker menu. So let's look at how we script that out and make that into a button. Okay, so I'm going to have this layout again. I'm going to go ahead and close this other worknote layout just because we don't need it anymore. I'm going to edit this layout. And right here at the very top left, I'm just going to copy paste this button. Make it maybe a little bit smaller so that it fits. Again, going to get rid of that stupid padding. This is where having styles and stuff like that set up is pretty helpful. Again, future lesson. And I'm going to change the icon. Let's say here, maybe I just use this one. Okay. And let's change the color over to be something else just for clarity, maybe pink. Okay. So now I can do this with a single step, and I'm going to delete the old one that was there. And I'm going to say view as. And now I've got a couple of options to choose from here. When I click on it, you see cycle is the default. So what that's going to do is every time I click that button, it's going to cycle to the next one of the available views. Because I have only specified this layout can be seen in a form view and a list view, it's just going to toggle back and forth between those things. If I wanted to make a button specifically for list view or specifically for form view, I could specify that here, but that's not what I want. I want it to be cycle. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to commit that change. Whoops. So real quick, when I did that, you notice it jumped over here to the right side. And if you might be wondering why that is, the reason is because we copy pasted this button from the bottom left, or excuse me, bottom right corner. When we did that, it also pasted the attributes about that button as far as keeping it anchored to that bottom right corner. So I just need to go in and I need to change those anchorings to be left and top instead of right and bottom. Boom. Now it does what I want it to do. And if I click on the button, it's going to still ask me that same thing again. It's going to ask me, do I want to save the change with this layout? I'm going to say no, but it's still a little bit faster, right? So now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Mike, there's got to be a way to not have that pop up every single time. And of course there is. This is where we have to actually write a script with a little bit of intelligence to it to know what layout we're currently on, and then based on what layout we're on, to switch to the other layout. So I'm going to open up my scripts editor to do that. Command-Shift-S. And you notice I've got all my nicely organized scripts from before. And you guessed it, I'm going to add another folder here. And I am going to call this folder data sorting. I guess data viewing would probably be a better, whoops, not that, would probably be a better name. Data viewing. And now I'm going to put a new script inside of there. Okay, so the first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable. Say set variable. And that variable is going to be a local variable. And I'm going to call that variable current view. Again, I'm using camel case just to make it easier to read. And the value for that variable, we're going to use one of those get functions that we talked about yesterday and the day before. So again, if you search for get, there's all kinds of information that you can get about your system, about your current file, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to start typing get. And the one we're looking for is get layout view state. And so what that's going to do is it's going to return to me a number based on what layout view we're in. So unfortunately, it's not as simple as just saying list view or table view. It's going to give me a 0, a 1, or a 2, and I'll explain what those mean in a second. But once I get that number, I can then use that number to inform what happens later on down the line. So setting a variable of current view to whatever the current layout view state is. So I'm going to copy paste this in here just so you can get an idea of what we're looking for. So that get layout view state is going to return one of 3 things. It's going to either return a 0 if you're currently in a form view. It's going to return a 1 if you're in a list view, and it's going to return a 2 if you're in a table view. The way you get to know that information is honestly Google get layout value state FileMaker. And what you're going to find is this amazing resource of all of the functions that are in there and what they do. So really great resource to bookmark and have. And it's as simple as just Googling that get function or whatever you're looking at. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is do some if-else-if logic here. So I'm going to say if current view equals 0, then view as list. Else if current view equals 1, view as form. Great. So now basically, again, what this is doing is it's saying, okay, if the current view is a form, then I'm going to switch it to a list. If the current view is a list, I'm going to switch it to a form. Now, we don't have a table enabled for this, so I'm going to kind of ignore that for now. If we did have the table view enabled, it would get a little more complicated because you can't necessarily switch, it's easier to go A, B, it's harder to go A, B, C. So there we are. So I'm going to save this. And what should I name this? I'm going to say cycle current, or cycle, I'm going to say toggle current view, save. And now back over here in my layout editor, I'm going to, instead of doing a single step with this, I'm going to link that button over to my toggle current view script. And now when I click it, it goes back and forth just like that with no pop-ups and no other problems. And again, because this is completely agnostic to what table we're in, it's only looking at what view we're in, you could use this button on any of those other layouts we've made so far. I could copy paste this button onto my instruments or onto my work notes and be able to switch between that list view and that form view or that single record view pretty quickly. So a pretty cool function there. Okay, what's next on the list? Okay, we did that. So the next thing I want to do is figure out how I can dynamically add an image either from my camera roll on my phone or take a photo live directly into this container using my phone. So the answer to that, of course, is let's make some scripts for it. So in my script editor over here, I'm going to add another divider and another folder. And I'm going to call this folder mobile layout tools, create a subfolder, and that's going to be called media functions. And now I'm going to create a new script. And I'm going to do it pretty simply. I'm going to say insert from device. Now, when I do insert from device, you see I have a whole bunch of options that pop up for me here. I can double click and I can specify what field I want to insert into. So obviously I want to choose my photo field for that. I want to choose, I can choose a little gear here and I can say from a camera, and then I can even specify if it's the back camera or the front camera and what the resolution of that photo should be. Now, one of the frustrating things about this is that FileMaker does not allow you to script your flash on and off. So trying to use this to do like focus photos and stuff like that gets a little challenging. If you have a iPad, one of the older iPads that doesn't have a flash, then it's no problem. And so that sometimes when we've done focus photos with this in the past, we just use the iPad because you don't have to worry about it. You can obviously turn the flash off on the when you go to do it on your phone, but again, it's tedious to do every single thing. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to call this add photo. And then I'm going to come back over to my layout and I'm going to add some buttons for it. So I'm going to do, let's just make a new button here. This is take photo. Cannot type tonight. And let's put a little camera icon next to it just for fun. Boom. Okay. And then of course I want to anchor that top left and right. And we're going to link that over to our script. Now you might be saying, Mike, why did you make a script for this? It's only one step. And that's strictly because we're going to expand on it in a second. Just for this first little venture, we're just going to link the script as it is. Okay. So now that looks great. I'm going to switch back over to my phone. And you'll notice that there's that button. When I tap it, my camera pops up. Here's my notes for tonight's session. My camera pops up. I can take that photo, ignore the fallen thing there. And now it drops that photo right inside of that container field. So pretty cool stuff. And if I come back over into FileMaker, where is it? Oh, so it didn't, it won't be committed until I actually change records. So I'm going to hit next on my phone. And when I come over here to 5, you see there's that photo I just took. It's right there. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Okay. What's next? So that's a great way to just take a photo, but what if I already have photos on my phone and I want to insert those into that field? I want to pull them in from the library. Okay, well now I want to maybe make that into 2 buttons, and instead of having 2 scripts, could I do this with 1 script? The answer is absolutely yes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that button. Going over a little bit of function over form in this particular case. Call this insert media, and maybe change that over to a picture icon. So now these are still both linked to that same script, but I'm going to use the script parameter, which we've talked about over the last couple of days, to specify which of the 2 buttons I pushed. So I'm going to take photo, parameter, camera. Oops, camera. Actually, this is a good thing to point out. Whenever you're typing in the calculation box, if you just want a string of characters or a text string, make sure you put it in quotes. If you're typing it directly into, let's say, a pop-up like this you don't have to put quotes. It's automatically going to put those in there for me. So we'll say library for this one. And you notice it added the quotes for me. So again, calculation engine, make sure you use quotes. If you're just in a regular box, you don't have to add the quotes. Great. So now what's happening when I click these buttons, it's running the same script, but depending on what button I've pushed, it's telling the script to do a different thing. So now we need to come in here and edit our script a bit. So what do you think the first step is going to be? First step is going to be to get that script parameter. I want to tell my script what it was. So I'm going to set variable. I'm going to call this one source, and it's going to be get script parameter. That. And then I am going to do if source equals camera. And I'm going to drag this one that I had before in there. Else if source equals library. And I'm going to copy paste this step right down into there and just change what I want about it. So instead of being a camera type, I'm going to say insert, I'm going to say insert from photo library. And that's all there is to it. Great, so let's test that out. I'm going to save this and go back to, I'm going to do this from the phone. So I'm going to switch over to my phone here. Okay, so here we are. Take photo. There's the camera again, right? Boom, 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 everything. Oh, there's my mix book. Also, all my photos are falling out of their frames up here too. I got to fix that. I'm going to click cancel. Oh, this is interesting. Insert from devices canceled. Do you wish to continue with this script? I'm going to say no for now. And now I'm going to say instead insert media. And boom, just like that, it's opened up my media browser. But again, when I click cancel, it's going to give me that same error again. So again, we must be able to figure out a way to not have it show us those errors, right? Of course we can. So I'm going to go back over to my script editor again. And I'm going to add one important step to the very top of this script. And that step is going to be set error capture. I'm going to say set error capture on. When you turn error capture on, anytime there's an error in your script, it will just stop and ignore it and not tell you about it unless you're using the debugger. It can be super, I like to leave it off when I'm developing a script, but once I have the script done, I always put it at the top of the thing for the most part, because for something like that, I don't want that error popping up and getting in my way again. Just doesn't, it wastes time, wastes valuable time when I'm trying to get those photos in. So put that script, that set error capture on at the top of your script. And I like to get in the habit of putting that at the top of all my scripts, like I said, when I'm done, unless there's a specific reason that I don't need it. Okay, so we talked about how to do that. We did the buttons, made the script. Great. So I think that's just about it as far as inserting media goes. Hopefully you see right away how powerful this can be to have that mobile device. And again, this is all, I've got my phone wired in, but that's only to be able to show you my screen. This works over Wi-Fi. So you could walk around the theater. If you've got a work note, you could walk up to that light, take a picture of it, drop it right into that work note. Or your production electrician could open up this free app on their phone, connect to your tech table server, your computer, and be able to see and manually check off and add notes to their work notes from their mobile device. 2 notes on that, of course. One, it is Apple device only, and 2, you can't have 2 people working in the same record at the same time. So if I have record 5 open on my screen, for example, right now, if I open up record number 5 on my phone and try to type something, it's going to give me an error and say that that record is currently being modified by somebody else. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind as you're working through your files. So the last thing I want to show you today is how to tell FileMaker Go what layout it needs to go to whenever you first open it. You know, when we opened it up today, you saw it went right to that PDF printout that PDF printout of our work notes. That's not going to be super useful for us. And likewise, here on the computerized version, we don't really want to have it jump into this iPhone work notes view. I want to maybe have it go to my admin screen instead when I first start. Maybe I want it to go right to my work notes screen when I first start out. So we're going to create a small script that allows us to determine what device it's running on or what operating system it's running on, and then take the user to the appropriate layout based on that information. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to add another divider, another folder, admin scripts. And I'm going to make a new script, and this is going to be called, I'm just going to call this startup script. Startup. Now, for now, it's going to just have a couple of functions, but you're going to start to find that there could be a lot of useful data that you could start adding to your solutions using this startup script. For example, getting an IP address, getting the resolution of your screen, getting all that information, storing it into global variables. So pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to do just some housekeeping here. So I'm going to do a set error capture on. And I am going to do a set variable. And I'm going to make this a global variable. So $2. And I'm going to say this is system platform. And the value for that variable is going to be get system platform. Just like that. So I'm going to save that script. I'm going to open up my data viewer here. And you notice in the current data viewer, there's nothing in there. But when I click play on this script, I forgot to save it. Watch what happens. Now it's set this global variable, and you see that the value of that global variable is 1. So just like our get layout or get view before, it's going to return a number for us. And what those numbers correspond to is right here. It's going to be a 1 if the current platform is on an Intel-based Mac computer. It's going to be a -2 if the platform is on a Windows-based computer, a 3 if it's on iOS, and a 4 if it's on WebDirect. And we're going to get into WebDirect some other time. WebDirect basically allows us to use a web browser in order to be able to view all of these layouts. So very cool for people who don't have FileMaker. So now what do you think we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to make some if statements. So if global variable, so $, system platform equals 1, go to layout, and I'm going to specify, let's just do our work notes layout. Else if global variable system platform equals 2, excuse me, not 2, 3, that's our iOS. I'm going to say go to layout iPhone work notes. Boom. And that's basically all there is to it. Now, the cool thing about this is you can nest other things into these if statements. So we could say something like, go to layout work notes and set zoom level to 100%. You could resize your window. You could do all kinds of stuff like that based on what your system platform is. So again, this is our startup. So I'm going to save that. And then to actually make that your startup script, kind of like a startup macro in EOS, I'm going to go to File, File Options, and under Script Triggers right here, last thing over, I'm going to say on first window open. So this is going to say the very first time a window opens in this file, I want it to run my startup script. Just like that. So now I'm going to leave this, let's say over here on this admin screen. I'm going to completely quit FileMaker. I got to close it on my phone too. So I've now completely quit FileMaker. You see it's gone. And when I open FileMaker back up and I open session 1.4, boom, it's dropped me into my worknotes layout. And if I do the same thing over on my phone, open FileMaker Go, choose iMac, and that session, boom, it's dropped me into that worknotes layout. So right away, that should be hopefully pretty obvious how powerful that functionality can be, and just the things that you'll be able to code into your applications that way. The last thing I'll leave you with for tonight is over here on your admin layout. You could do all kinds of stuff with this. You could even make this a kind of like a landing page for your solution, and you could have buttons that take you to those various places. In my FileMaker, I can show you this really quickly. In my FileMaker on this layout, this is an admin layout, and it has all these kinds of buttons that take you to all these different places. I have a startup script that runs. I gotta find it here. I have a lot of scripts in this in this database. Startup sizing script. You can see this is my startup script for that. So it does a whole bunch of things. It sets a whole bunch of variables, sets sizes, sets all that kind of information. And I actually have a modified version of this that runs every single time I go back to this home screen. So it does things like, just did my IP address change? Are there additional users on the system now, et cetera, and refreshes those things, because you can set that up within your layouts as well. So lots and lots of cool stuff you can do with startup scripts. Okay, so that is the end of the content for chapter 1 of this series. My goal going forward in the next couple of days, I'm going to work on a non-live series that have a series of just like little tips and tricks of things that I've forgotten to talk about this week. Those will be things like conditional formatting, doing how to use the data viewer and the script debugger a little bit more effectively, how to be a little bit more discerning with when, yesterday we played around with creating these buttons on our instrument records to search for certain things. We'll be able to, I'll show you how to do like nested versions of that. So I can say, show me the pars that are also R2006. And then I also want to talk a little bit about doing some dynamic value lists where your buttons, even in this value, your buttons could change what they say based on items in your show or in your value list. So those are going to be coming at some point. After that, I think the next chapter of this series is going to be all about the instrument side of things. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to give you some instructions that will allow you to take the instrument side of this and create your own paperwork, also create focus charts, do all of that kind of stuff. So look forward to that at some point in the near future. Don't know if it'll be next week, but definitely within the next 2 weeks, I'll start that series. And finally, thank you all so much for all of your support in all of this. It means a lot that you are all watching this and that you're finding it useful. I really love being able to do this. I've wanted to do it for such a long time. And my goal is once we start working again, I want to continue this stuff and I want to do more behind the scenes things. And I want to keep sharing the process and sharing these tools and stuff like that, especially with the young people and the students who are watching. So if you find it useful, please share my stuff. Please check me out on Patreon. I know nobody has disposable income right now. So if you can't join me on Patreon, just share these videos, share them with people you know, help get the word out, and hope to see you all someday very soon in a theater. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the YouTube. Those of you in Zoom, if you have any other questions, I'll hang out for a few more minutes. But thanks, everybody.